G'day and welcome to another episode of the Footy Form Guide podcast. I'm your host, Walley, joined as always, of course, by my good mate, Harro. How are you, mate?
Yeah, going well, Wally. Another massive week in footy, and the changes in the game just don't stop coming, do they?
No, mate, they don't. It's fascinating to watch at the moment. It's been a bit of a roller coaster the last few weeks after a really, really good start to the season, but still plenty of positives out of the weekend. Talk us through the betting highlights.
Yeah, so we had the Cats as our best bet over the Pies, and that covered easily in the end. And I thought, how would Hawks supporters feel with the Pies kick 15-3 against them, and then they they follow up the next week against the Cats and they kick? Let me double check what they've kicked. I think they've kicked
It wasn't.
9-14.
Yeah.
So you feel a little bit stiff if you're a Hawks fan, but that was
Yeah.
good for us anyway. We got the that covered absolutely easily. We put up a second best bet last week, which we like to do sometimes, and that was the Suns over the Saints. And I tell you, sometimes it's just things just go your way, don't they? I mean, Naz is a laid out, and then Wilkie goes down, in the early part of the game, and you end up covering the line there. So maybe we got one our way. A lot of punters enjoyed this one, Wally. It was Bailey Smith to get 40 touches, and he did that right on the bell at the end there. So a lot of the punters enjoyed that. Amongst other highlights, mate, they're the main ones I've picked out.
All right, mate, they were all the positives. What did we get wrong?
Well, mate, there was two that stood out for me, and I always kind of say when it's taking to beat us when they're very narrow margins, our winners are winning by heaps and our losers are losing by narrow margins. We had Port over the Doggies. They lost by 2 points. And then this one really stung. We had Adelaide minus 37.5 against the Tigers, and they won by 37. That was an absolute ball breaker. So a couple of maybe unlucky ones there, mate, as well.
Yeah, very close on the losses, but well on the wins. All right, mate, we'll look ahead to this week. Before we do, the selection table is back, of course. My ins and outs for the weeks. I've kept this pretty simple this week. There's not a lot I'm not loving about footy. I'm really getting into my work now for the season, starting to enjoy it. The colder weather's hitting. Red wine and steak weather is upon us, as is trying to find an open fire and a game of footy on a Sunday, Harrow. So, ins for me. Saturday twilight at the G. Now, this gets me going. 4:15, when your team gets this sort of game on a Saturday, and we don't get many of them now, the Hawks, we're going okay. So there's a lot of night footy, a lot of feature footy. That's great. I'll never say no to that. But Saturday 4:15 against the D's, Cozzy at one end, the Wiz at the other. So, like, entertainment spectacular. It's one I can't think of a better matchup for neutral fans. Like, they're just exciting teams that are probably playing almost to an evenish level at the moment. Like, this game is on. And just for me, Saturday Arvo, Harrow, prees, you can have a few Arvo beers at the G, into your game of footy, into the night game at a pub with a steak and a jammo. Like, it's the most perfect thing. I love 4:15 Saturdays. Don't get me wrong. I'm always an old school 2:10 on Saturdays is how I grew up and I loved it. But looking back at it, I'm glad we don't have it anymore because all the games are on at the same time. And reckon the fixturing's bad now. That was a nightmare. So for me, just really, really excited about having my team play 4:15 at the G. I think that anytime you get that Arvo twilight spot for your team in wherever it is, I think it's a really, really good one because you can go and you can go out to lunch, you can have a few drinks, you can go out to dinner and watch a game afterwards. It's brilliant. So I'm looking forward to that. The other one for me, and I at first didn't love this for planning reasons, but now I get excited. The fixture, the back end of the fixture when that gets announced, that is now upon us. That's going to be announced very soon. And that gets me going. Just that excitement of it coming out and being able to plan how you're going to attack each game. What am I going to watch where? And it just gives us another little, as annoying as the fixturing has been, it just gives us another little moment in the season to look forward to and find a little bit more about what's going to happen in the second half. So they're two positives this week that are making me happy. I've only got one out this week, I'm not going to have a crack at the fixturing, although it is to do with fixturing. But do you know what I didn't like? And it's for a positive reason. I didn't like the 2 Sunday games. The 2 Sunday games only, Harro, I'm not enjoying, because I want 3. I want a 12. I want a 3:15. I want a 6 o'clock or something. I want 3 games separate. I say it a lot. I really, that Sunday evening game, like, when you don't have, like, I watched the Richmond Adelaide game, which was actually quite entertaining, because the Tigers, they put up a fight and whatnot. And as you said, we had a really close watch on that one, but I just would have loved one more game after that, Harrow. So 2 game Sundays are a big out for me. Bring back the 3. I'd say this: if you're going to do the 2 Friday nights, just 3 Saturday, 3 Sunday, just separate them. Give us the 9 hours of footy straight. Beautiful bit of David King in the middle to tell us what's going on. Geez, doesn't he work on a Saturday? He puts in about 15 hours, that bloke. But that's my ins and out for the week, Harrow. And now I reckon we move on to some questions from punters.
Beautiful.
All right, so I can knock a few of these off, and then we're going to go through a few, and any we miss we'll answer on social, just for time pressures, because there was a lot this week. A few ones that I can knock off. Someone asked why I call it the Green Cafe, Tab. Green Cafe, because they're green and you've kind of got to go into the physical building to have a bet sometimes. So it's like a cafe. They don't always deliver to your house. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. All right, next one. How do you guys feel about champion data? I laughed when I read that, Harrow. How do I feel? There have been a number of disposals being missed. Feel like they're becoming extremely poor at their job. Thank you. Should we not demand better? Yes, we should demand better. There is always errors with it. I don't understand it. The frustrating thing with me and champion data is we see so much of them talking about all these, getting on their heads on TV and all this now, talking about all the, the numbers. That's fine, and it all makes sense. And Hoyne, that does it, very, very intelligent man, obviously, talks really well about the odds. But I just want you to, I don't care about the storylines around them. I just want you to get the odds right. We saw it with Chera last year. We saw it with Dylan Moore a couple of weeks ago. There was a Viney one last year. They're every week or two. They used to correct them when they were contacted. They are like the KGB now. They will not talk to anyone. The doors are slammed shut, and good luck getting a hold of anyone and them listening and making a change. So you're 100% right. If you are going to have markets on this stuff, I think you owe it to the punters who are spending their hard-earned to get it right. 100% getting it right. It's not about, the coaches and that looking and going, oh, well, did he have 17 or 18? They kind of don't give a shit. They're looking at what happens in individual things. But if you're going to offer markets and you've got a company that are providing the data for it, they damn sure have to get that right, Harrow. So that's our opinion there. With lying ladders, bookies are uncanny at getting even splits over the long run. Should we start betting against the Swans as an example? Well, Harrow and I, we spoke about this off air. It's really, really clear. So aligned here. Just look at every game individually. Do the form on those games. Find your trends around those games. Teams have finished on the lying ladder 17-5. So we're not saying base all your betting on it. We just find it something interesting and a way to track how teams are going week to week. But still, definitely do your form on them each week. It's just a fun thing we like to follow throughout the season. And the last one from me, Harrow, if you're having a bad week on the punt, does that change your process, like going more conservative, review bets, take a break if needed, clear your head, drop staking, all of that? So that for us is a really, really simple one. We've always said review your bets, exactly what it's asked here, like review your bets, make sure you're getting them right. If you are finding it is stressful and it is too hard and you're not seeing things correctly, take a break. And if your bank drops, be more conservative on your stake, but just have your processes in place at the start of the season where you're reviewing your bets, you know what you're spending, you're doing it responsibly, you're doing it wisely. And then if it does get too much for you, give yourself some time away to reset and go again. And the last one, actually, there was one more. Where do you find coaches' midweek press conferences? Team websites are the best for that. Just go on the team website. You should be able to get them all there. Sometimes it's on their YouTube. Team website, first point of call. Whew, I'm out of breath, Harrow. Usually I don't have to go through them all, but I've tried to knock as many off before I ask you a few of the more poignant ones. How how much attention, Harrow, do you pay to line movement? For example, if a line has moved 10 points against a bet you like during the week, does that scare you off making the bet, or do you back yourself in? Or I guess rather than scare you off, is that where you create a middle and you back the other line and you have a sweet spot in the middle and you walk away either unscathed or with a double win?
Well, I rarely do that because I figure that the first bet you've had is, such a good value bet. Right? Why ruin it with having another bet just for the sake of making a middle? I'd rather just run with the original bet, and if the line's moved heavily your way, well, you've just got yourself a great bet. Just stick with it. Is normally the way I go. Unless it's like weather related. Sometimes I'll do that with the weather if I think, I've had a big go at the unders, for instance, and then the weather doesn't turn out quite what I thought it was going to be. I might make up a middle there. It can be a bit frustrating, can't it? Like often I'll tip something up on the podcast and then I'll go to back it and it's the lines move 6 points or something. I'm like, why did I say that? But
Yeah.
I've just got to probably get myself on a bit earlier. But yeah, you kind of, when I go to place a bet, I'm judging everything at the time I'm placing it. And so if the line's moved, well, I've just got to adjust my thinking and say, is this still value? And often it might still be value, but it might not be as much value as before. So you reduce your stake a little bit because we're basically staking to the value of the bet, aren't we? If the more value the bet is, the more we're having. So that's the sort of principle we're using there. And so, yeah, when the line moves, you've just got to adjust your staking to accommodate for it.
Yep, very, very good, Harrow. Another one here. The footy quad at the someone's using the Green Cafe. I love it. The footy quad at the Green Cafe is a very forgotten and non-marketed bet option. Any tips how to bet on it? Do you remember the footy quad?
I'm not really across this one. No, I can't say I am.
No, let us look into this. I saw this. Now I should know this. The footy quad. I remember there used to be the pick 8 where you just pick all 8 teams and it wasn't the odds. It was just how many people had the same ones and it was a pool. I'm assuming the footy quad. Or was
So
this
it's
the
like
one
the
where it's
toe.
4 games and you had to get their margins?
Right.
I reckon it is, Harrow. I reckon this is a bet that you have every game. You have 4 games they select, and it goes. The margin is like 1 to 39, 40 plus draw or whatever it is, and it's all of them spread. And you can have numerous legs like a quadrella, and then whatever the combo is at the end comes out of the pool. We'll have a look at that because I reckon that used to be a fun bet. So it's like horse racing meets 4 games of footy. I'll come back to them on that, ideally even before this goes live. So that one I'm going to look at. Harrow, to be honest, mate, the rest of these are pretty much aligned to games.
Yep.
So we might just tackle them as we go through. The only other one I had here was, do you blokes have much to do with Dabble or had problems with it? You dead set get banned quicker than Tab. Yep. That's and Tab have a share in it, so it makes sense. Anyway, shall we get into the games, Harrow?
Let's do it, mate.
All right, Brisbane Geelong. Brisbane is $1.45. The Cats are $2.80 after a great win and a new style of play, which looked really, really ominous. And the line is 15.5. Shout out as always. Our odds are the best price on Betfair the morning of recording, which is a Wednesday morning. Betfair, Bet Sniper. Sorry, Bet Sniper. Not on the exchange because that's unrealistic. On Bet Sniper. And a question to consider when you're giving us your preview here was, who do the Geelong taggers go to on Thursday night and do Brisbane tag anyone? But I'll let you do your whole preview. No doubt we'll cover that, Harrow.
Yeah. Just on the first one, who do they go with the tag? Well, it was interesting listening to Fags this year, and he was asked, why is Lachie Neale, having such a career season at the moment? And he said, well, teams have stopped tagging him, where like in the past, he was the number one guy everyone was going to. And so that's really interesting. So they're obviously, teams are not putting as much attention into Lachie Neale now. That could change this week, given how well he's going. So I guess if I was thinking, but the other one you could do is the other guy in great form is Charlie Cameron. And we know that Mullen played on the whiz, didn't he, against Hawthorn? And so perhaps they think that might be the way to go and try and go a bit head-to-head in the midfield. I mean, in these Geelong games, they are very hard to often get all the matchups right. On the weekend, I was scratching my head. Tanner Bruhn was playing as a defensive half forward on Dan Houston. I just how do you pick that? So and you had Isaac Quaynor went to a wing to try and play, a defensive role as well. There's a lot of actually tricky matchups in that game. We had also Ned Long going to Tom Stewart, but the Tanner Bruhn one caught me off guard. I didn't see that coming. So obviously you got to wait for teams to be announced as well, and then just go line by line and try and work it all out. I don't reckon it's a real obvious one. Anyway, on to the game. The Cats, look, they looked good last week. The margin was definitely flattering. It 100% was with the way that the Pies, they're kicking for goal. I think that the expected margin was more around the 3 goals. So, I'm not getting carried away with that form. They are off a 5-day break here, so that straight away rules out any kind of bet on the Cats for me. When the Lions, they're off a 6-day break with no travel. They've got the home ground advantage thrown in here, and I think they're just a better side overall, as they were able to show in the granny last year. So the 15.5 for the Lions at home against a side off a 5-day break. And the other thing about the Lions, Wally, which we know there's a bit of a rule with this, you back the Lions when they are playing someone they see as a challenger.
Yep.
We saw the Lions turn up on what was it, Friday night against the Blues, got the job done early, and then packed up and went home, didn't they, late? And you're not going to see them do that when they're playing, the Cats or let's just say Gold Coast, who they see as a bit of a rival. They're going to be up for this, and so I'm quite keen on the Lions, mate. The other area I had a look here. The total points is 185.5. The last 2 games played between this side has made up over that. The Lions' last 4 games have all been over that. And the Cats basically, and they've played 2 games, this year that have gone under 180. One of them was the Crows in the wet, and the other one was against Port Adelaide, who, I'm calling them the under kings at the moment because they're, 8-1 on the under so far this season, I believe. So, I think if you take those 2 games out of the Cats sample, they're all high scoring. And even you look back last year, all their games were pretty much high scoring unless they were in bad conditions. So I don't mind the over 185.5. Bailey Smith to get, over 29.5 disposals. His line is this week. He just does that week in, week out. Unless he's been tagged, which he's only been tagged once this season. And I'm pretty sure the Lions, they don't mind him getting the ball and turning it over back to them. So they'll let him run around doing as much of that as possible. Hugh McCluggage, mate, he's back to his best. He's had 25 in both of his last 2 games. His line's 23.5, and I don't think he's going to get the attention just because he hasn't built up a big bank of form so far this year. So he'll probably be allowed to, run around and get his share. But Will Ashcroft, he's actually now, I noticed on the weekend, gone back to having about 50% centre bounce attendances, which is where he was sort of more or less last year. Now, he was getting like the 70s and 80s when McCluggage was out of the team or not doing so well. And I think with him going back to being more of a 50% CBA player, the under 27.5, I have a little bit of a sort of inkling to go there. And, mate, I think it's going to be a great way to start the football weekend. Last year's grand final replay. I probably won't be losing as much on this game as I did in the granny, which was my worst result for the season last year. But we've put that behind us.
I don't think that's possible for us to lose as much as we did on grand final day, Harro.
So, very keen on the Lions, mate. That's going to be our main bet in this one.
There you go. Well, yeah, as you said, these 2 played in the grand final. The 2 previous teams from the grand finals prior to that, Sydney Collingwood playing the next game. And the Swans are $1.22, Collingwood's $4.75. The line is 30.5. So a biggish line there for Sydney. So really interested to see how you think the Pies will respond and if Sydney
Yep.
can keep their winning ways going.
Yeah, obviously this line started at about 22.5, and that was pretty tasty, wasn't it? The 30.5 is probably a little bit closer to the mark, but look, I could still only be with the Swans at home, and I will be waiting for teams. I would like to see Charlie Curnow named before rushing in because I think that they missed him a little bit on the weekend. I've had a look at his
Mm.
stats. He's winning the second most in the comp offensive one-on-ones. Like he's actually really important, even though people have been knocking him. You have a little dig into it, and he's winning a really high percentage of contests in the forward line. So I'd like to see him back, but I'm kind of, I lean to Sydney, but I'm not going to be. It's no gift, so I'm not like flat out diving into it. Also, I do think that the Swans' form has come off the boil just a little bit in the last 2 weeks. They've lost the last two games at the line, and I'm reading their performance versus North as a loss. Really, I'm pretty sure they lost on expected scoring. They definitely had less scoring shots, and North won most of the kind of the stats that are most telling. So a little bit of a watch there. The Pies, I listened to Fly's presser, and he can sort of see where they're at now, I think, and he said that they're just not at the level, which we've all known for a little while, but they're just not at the level of the top teams anymore. And look, I think I'm reading their game against the Cats as like a 25-point loss. I'm reading their game against the Hawks also, which they drew, as also a 25-point loss around that sort of mark. And I think now Sydney probably going better than the Cats and the Hawks, and this game switches to the SCG. And so, and no Pendles and no more. I'm pretty keen. I think that sort of all tilts in the Swans' favour, if you know what I'm saying. So, look, Dacos, mate, last week he was obviously tagged by Mullen. Now I expect Jordan to go and do the job there as well. I just don't want to really oppose him at the line though. I mean, he still managed 29 disposals. Um, Probably one of the worst 29 disposal games you're ever going to see, though. But it's when we're betting on disposals, aren't we? We're not betting on the impact he has on the game.
No.
And so I think Sydney will have watched that and thought, well, if he wants to run down and have kick-ins and get, kick at 55% and have, 19 of his disposals in the back half, we'll probably let him do that. But we're going to really focus on him once he gets maybe this side of centre. So he could still have his 29. So although he's being tagged, I would normally want to be under it. Having seen the way he's playing and the way he did this last week, he's kind of more concerned with how many kicks he's getting rather than the impact he's having. And so I'll sort of put off that now. The other area that I like in this one is the Sydney backs. They're at a really good advantage here. And so I'm looking at guys like Blakey. I'm looking at Mills, even a couple of the guys who might be lower possession players who play through that back line as well, like not Wicks, because I think he'll have a bit of a defensive job to do, but more
Riley
so,
Bice.
yeah, Bice isn't a bad one. And even the key back, the new key back, Edwards, like you might only have to back him to get 10 or something like that. But these kind of guys are getting their fair share against the Pies as well. So yeah, and I like this is the number 2 disposal team in the comp, Sydney, playing the team that gives up the most in the comp in the Pies. So and they give up the most uncontested possessions and marks. So those guys who get marks, and their possessions uncontested, even your wingers are probably going to do well here as well. So and watch for the teams, because I know that Jake Lloyd got a big bump on the weekend with the winger that they got from Hawthorn being out. Is it Sarong? Yeah.
Strong.
So watch for him as well. If Sarong doesn't play, Jake Lloyd on a wing. He does love the uncontested ball as well. He could go really well against the Pies also.
Harro, just on that, like, is this we look for a lot of these players sometimes should we just also be looking and going, Isaac Heaney is a freak and he just gets a heap of the ball against one of the team that allow the most disposals? Should we just be looking at him as well, just to have a big night?
Well, I mean, with this kind of matchup, you're looking at every Swans player really and adding a couple
Yeah.
to their overall average or whatnot. And so when you do that, and you compare it to where they've got him set, if they've got Heaney set at 27 or 28, I'm probably like, okay, they've set him a few above. But some of these other guys, if they're set to their averages, I'll be looking to go over them because I think most players are going to get a little bump. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, they're all going pretty well, the Swannies players. So, and even you saw Heaney, North are about the toughest team to get it against. I think he still had his 24 or 25 against
Yeah,
North, didn't he?
very good.
With lots of attention too.
The other thing is just on Dacos, for example, Jordan. I don't reckon Jordan's been great this year on the tag. I don't reckon he's been as impactful as he has other years.
Yeah, you could be right. And they haven't been running it for the whole game either. They haven't they've committed to it in stages. So I think Dacos will probably still beat his line here, even with the tag. But I'd rather wait until he's not going to get tagged before backing him again.
Yep. Absolutely. Fair enough too. All right, mate, we move on now. Next game on the Friday night, Gold Coast v Port Adelaide. I'm looking forward to this. This could be a bit of fun. So Port have been desperately stiff in the last. So they were competitive against St Kilda at Gather Round. They lost to the Hawks by less than a kick. Then they beat the Cats soundly. Then they lost a showdown and then to the Dogs at home by a point and 2 points, mate. Look, they are playing as well as any team are playing without winning. And if you add all of that, they could be 7-2. It's craziness at the moment. They don't won all those, they'd be 7-2, Harro, which is bananas. So this will be interesting. Gold Coast, that said, is $1.26. Port a $4.25. The line is still 26.5 points. And we know where it is. It's up where they don't lose. It's up where they don't miss the line. This is what Gold Coast do. What are they? Is it 7-0 or 9-0?
No, they're 9-0. 9-0 now.
Oof. So they're 9-0 up there, and then they get Port Adelaide, and you'd think they'd fancy themselves, who have come off a couple of tough matches.
Yeah. It's just like it all comes back to value at the end of the day, and I really feel like this is completely priced in now. So the 25.5 for me, Port getting that sort of a start, it kind of feels pretty big. And it's just whether you want to take on the Suns up there, but you are getting a big start and a big price for what, I put this back down to form and, there's no way Port are 25, 26 points worse off than Gold Coast Suns, especially if you just look at the last month of form, for instance. So I could only be with Port despite all of that. And I also look at the Suns' effort against the Saints, and I sort of spoke about it a little bit earlier. When they lose Naz before the game, and then they lose Wilkie during the game. I was looking at some of Wilkie's stats last night, and he's the best defender in the comp, Wally.
Yeah,
he's losing the least one-on-ones.
That's the most important players. They've lost their two best players, and away from home.
And Jack Higgins didn't play. And it's hard to rate that. I know it was 29 points in the end, but it was 20 scoring shots to 24, the Saints, with all those things against them. There's no way I'm really rating that performance from Gold Coast. They shouldn't have beaten the line. I think we were lucky. And just sort of weighing all that up. And you look at Gold Coast form, previous to that, it's not, it's not exciting me, basically. I'm not going to tip Port up to win because I just don't think they will. But $4.25 is a big price, isn't it? When you look at Gold Coast, they weren't that impressive against the Giants. I know they won that by 20 points, but then you look at the Giants' next effort, and they were very unimpressive on the weekend against Essendon. So how's that form lining up? Just that immediate little bit of form. You go back another week, and the Suns were beaten by 50 points by Hawthorn. I mean, their form's just not great. Now, I think they're going to be really good by the end of the year. I think the Suns will probably win a final or two. But right now, looking at what they're doing right now, I don't love what they're doing. And Port getting a 26-point start. I'm happy to maybe have a little bet there, and nothing would shock me if they won it. Now, outside of that, I spoke about Port being the under total points kings, and we saw in this game the other day between the Suns and the Saints, it was difficult conditions, wasn't it? It
Yeah,
was quite
and it's going
slippery.
to be again.
Yeah, and this game is a 8:10 p.m. game, so it's a little bit later, I believe, like half an hour later, basically, than what they started the other night, or 40 minutes actually. And it gets progressively worse as well. So they're actually going to start with it in quite like muggy, yucky conditions. So I think getting a line here of 174.5, I'm happy to be under that, Wally. Just with looking at Port's sort of last 6 games, they've gone 146, 151, 150, 175, which would beat this by half a point, and 138. And I'm thinking back, and not too many of these games were played in poor conditions either. So this could be a low scoring one, Wally. And just with the line at 174.5, happy to play the under there. Now, with the players, this is a tricky one, for your disposal bets, because Port, they're the number 18 team in the comp for combined disposals. They are restrictive. They do put work into players, and it can be a little bit of a tricky one from a disposal point of view. So just be careful with that. You could try and get clever here and play tackles, because we do have the number 1 and 2 conceding tackle teams in the comp. So I don't know. I haven't really played the tackle markets much, but if you wanted to get clever, you could try and pick some blokes out for some tackles, or you think maybe going to be around the ball a fair bit, and don't mind getting their knees dirty, mate.
What I will say is you got 2 games Friday night. This is obvious for all of those that like to have a multi in that, and you want to have a look at both games. This is really clear. You've got a nice under bet. You could even go a bigger line under as well, because it could be really low scoring in this game. And just have your SGM on the Sydney Collingwood game, where we think that there's going to be a huge amount of disposal. It's really, really simple. Separate the 2 games. You've got your under totals here, and you've got your SGM on the other one. So I like it, Harro. All right, we'll move on to Saturday's games. Adelaide taking on North Melbourne here. This is an interesting one. Adelaide's $1.40, North's $3.15, the line's 18.5. They've turned a corner, there's no doubt. They are pushing better sides. They are winning games they should be winning. Apart from like that West Coast one, they're winning the other games they should be winning, and they're looking good across the ground. Very interesting game on this one for me, Harro. Adelaide obviously have the home ground advantage. How do you see it?
You're right, mate. They're definitely turned, and I give you. There's a couple of guys who I reckon are the big catalyst for this North Melbourne kind of resurgence right now, and we're going to be able to watch these guys for a long time to come. And they've got really well-rounded games, Wally. They're very good physically. They don't mind contact. They get their knees dirty. They got good skills. It's George Wardlaw, and it is Finn O'Sullivan. Both of those 2 guys worried the life out of Sydney on the weekend. Just some of their contest work and their defensive work, as well as what they were able to do with the ball. These 2 guys are they're in that engine room for North Melbourne. They're going to worry a lot of sides, as we saw them do that with Sydney on the weekend. The other guy's Cherry. So they just got guys who can win their own footy in the middle. And that's without even getting into your LDU sort of areas too. And so I am really liking what I'm seeing from North Melbourne. They've got a defensive side to their game now, which they didn't have in the past. And I know there's defensive, which impacts the scoreboard. And yes, they conceded over 100 points and whatnot on the weekend. It was only 16-9 though. So that could easily have been like, something like 14-11 or something like that. And the Swans are the highest scoring team in the comp. So you could look at it that way. They've kept the highest scoring team in the comp to 16-9. Not too bad, okay? I have a look over at the Crows and obviously watch them as well. The one thing that stood out from the Crows their forward line doesn't look anywhere near as good, and when they don't have Fogarty and Walker. I thought that was really obvious on the weekend. They're just nowhere near as potent or as efficient without those two guys there. And so I'm keen to be against the Crows here, mate, while they don't have Fogarty and Walker. I think the Crows are going to be all right. I think they'll come good at some point. But I think North getting a 3-goal start, you just look at the form. I know they're away from home and interstate, but I'd just be happy to be, follow the value here and be there. Now, there's a few areas that do look pretty good from a disposal point of view and players and whatnot as well. There's LDU. Crows are giving up very high to inside mids. LDU is exactly that, 26.5. He had 34 on the weekend against a restrictive type side in the Swans. Happy to look at that. I'm really loving what Wardlaw's doing. He's a low time on ground player, but you only need him to get 20, and that's $1.88. Happy to look at that. Crows concede really high to rucks, and I think North have got the second best ruck going around at the moment. And so you could look at Sherry to get his 20, which he's done pretty regularly this season. I know he got 18 on the weekend, but that was against Brodie Grundy. The other area here is North are conceding really low to like those defensive ball user backs. And the Crows have got a few of them, like it's Malira, his line's 25.5. I could be under that. And also Laird at 24.5, happy to be under that, because that's about where he's been going anyway, without factoring in the fact that they are now playing a very restrictive North. One last one here, Wally, and I spoke about how North are improving their defence and also Adelaide not looking too efficient when they go forward. And so I'll be happy to back the Crows to go under 99.5. They've just kept Sydney to 105 with accurate kicking. And I've just seen Adelaide couldn't even kick 90. I don't think they got to 90, did they? They were around about 90 against the Tigers, which was very disappointing. So I'd be happy to back the Crows to go under 100, mate.
All right, love that, Harro. A lot for us to play there. We spoke about multis earlier. There's plenty of angles there for you. Love too when a line falls around that 20 mark, so you don't need to mess around trying to find over-unders, and you will be able to get 20 plus in your SGM with every single bookmaker in the country. So I like that a lot. Okay, Melbourne Hawthorn. I spoke about this earlier, my love for Arvo and Twilight footy at the MCG. Weather looks clear too, Harro, which I hope it stays clear. I'll be out in the open, you take the risk of being in the open this time of year for the atmosphere rather than being undercover or behind the glass. Now, D's are $3.10, which feels so scarily big to me. Hawthorn's $1.40. The line's 18.5 points. Hawthorn's got a couple of key outs, which we know. Our number one key defender, we are spoiled for choice down there, but Barras is out. We saw how that affected structure mid-game last week. Don't have that problem this week because you got the week to prepare for it. Connor Nash is going to miss. There was a question actually asking if Duke doesn't play, who soaks up the midfield minutes of possessions, and also Cozzy might run amok here. I don't think the Cozzy-Nash thing doesn't link for me. I don't think he'd be the obvious player to go with him anyway, and I don't feel like that Melbourne have that big body Bont Cripps, Finn O'Callaghan style football that Nash would run with. So it's not the worst out in the world. It's not good, but it's definitely not a Barras out. Jack Gunston is a test. And then I believe Cal Shadir is a test. And then you've got this line of these other Will McCabe and Schubert and all of these we've got all these young key forwards. So who knows who's going to be playing Harrow? There is a lot that is going to happen at Thursday, 6:05 or whatever, whenever the teams are announced. So that's just as somebody that's across this game from a Hawthorn perspective, there is a lot of wait until the teams come out here is a piece of advice from me. But Melbourne are playing some good footy. 18.5 feels like a big line.
Yeah. Hey, Wally, I just you just started talking about injuries. I brought up the injury update on the AFL website.
You're going to mention
Will Day, 1 week.
Scares me, Harro. I'm scared. I've got a son at home that asks every day, Dad, we're going to go and see. Yeah, mate, we're going to be there. Like I've spoken about before, my son is 8 and obsessed with Will Day. Like, he wears number 12. It's more than that. Like, he trades all his footy cards to get Will Day cards, and he's got a separate album he's building out for Will Day cards. So we are talking about an obsession. Like, he hasn't got to see him play enough. So he's already planning it, and he's getting ready for the game. And I've explained we're not going to fly into state if he's playing in state, but the likelihood is he would play in Melbourne first. But Harro, it scares me because once he comes back, I'm on the edge of my seat for the rest of the season. Because I just don't know.
It's crept up, actually. I thought he was still ages away, but 1 week.
No, because it was like last season, and then the re-injury. So it was sort of like, I think that it all got muddied. Everyone, there's been different injuries, and because he's had the shoulder and the foot and the two things going at different times, and they're both happened multiple times, I think it all just mashes in a little bit, and we forget when it is. But the bottom line is, a week, it scares me, Harro.
Yeah, this game though, Wally, I'm a bit shy to play the line here because I just think there's so much better value around disposals. And I spoke about it in the Swannies game where we've got the a team that gathers a lot of the footy playing a team that's happy to concede a lot of the footy. And here we get the D's who they actually gather the 16th most footy, and the Hawks concede the 17th most footy. So we could be looking at under Demons players, and we could be looking at over Hawks players because we see the Hawks gather the third most footy and the Demons concede the third most. So looking at it from those points of view, there should be, and it doesn't mean that Hawthorn's going to win or beat the line or anything like that. It's just the styles of footy that teams are using. And obviously it's working for the D, so why wouldn't they keep going with it?
But it's efficiency, Harro, right? Like, they move the ball so efficiently to score. And that's the whole thing. They move the ball so efficiently and quickly and then score at a really efficient rate. So as you say, it does not, like, getting a heap of the ball doesn't always translate to you're going to be able to, like, win the game. It's what we saw at Hawthorn Collingwood. Look at how much ball Collingwood just goes, you know what? We know what we're doing here. We're going to set up this forward half web. You will get all of this ball in your back half. But then there was a biggish line, and they not only covered it, they drew the game. So possession doesn't always translate to you're going to win the footy.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I say this about sides, I'm not actually knocking the side or anything like that. Because I know people get a little bit, you hate Collingwood because you're rah-rah. I'm saying, no, I'm just saying they concede lots of disposals. So, rah-rah-rah. So anyway, we do get a pretty good matchup for disposals here. And I'm probably going to avoid the line and whatnot and focus on, well, there's two areas. If the weather's good, I really like the over 180.5, Wally. We've seen this in Demons games all season. That's a star bet if the weather's good. So, and we know the Hawks don't mind. Although we played the unders in the Hawks game last week, that had a lot to do with their opponent, Freo, and what they've been doing against Freo in the past. So, do keep your eye on the weather. And if we get a chance in a Melbourne game to back over 180, I'm happy to do it. Then it's like looking at disposals. Now, there's not many Hawks guys that you're going to look at and think that they're not in a good area here against the Ds. There's a couple that I like. My thoughts might change after teams, and we'll see how the Hawthorn midfield actually lines up. So I really want to see that first. So I'm going to look outside of the midfielders, and we've seen all year the high half forwards and whatnot, and wingers doing really well. And this guy's in great form, and it's Jack Ginnivan, $1.95 to get 20. I'm really happy to have a look at a guy like that. Now, Weddle, there's one thing I know about Weddle. He may play back with Barras being out. When he plays back, he gets healthy numbers. When he plays wing, he doesn't. So that's one thing to work out when the teams come out. I think that he'll play back, and so I'll likely be liking to have a bet on Weddle. Now, the D's actually concede the number one disposals in the comp to small forwards. Can you think of a small forward, Hawthorn? Have Have they got anyone up there that's actually in any good form? Trying to think.
Anyone magical that loves casting spells, Harrow? Is there anyone
I don't
that's
know.
just my height that's going, Jesus, he's
Did you
breaking
just compare
ankles now.
yourself to the Wizard, mate?
No, mate, no. I just said it was my height. I was actually, if anything, that's having like I obviously don't have any of the attributes, but I'm just confessing how short I am. The one
Yeah.
thing people are not talking about is how good his height is, Harry. I'll give you the tip. Although his low center of gravity, the fact he's so low to the ground is making it bloody hard to play on him.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's not
So
too
he's a
many
guy.
players breaking ankles like he did the other night, mate. So the Wiz is an area. Would that be like that 15 disposal area? Would it, Harrow?
I think you'll be able to get him more around the 13 or 14, and that's what he's been getting anyway. They don't really have a great matchup for the Wiz. So, yeah, happy to have a look at him. And just with the defense versus position, yeah, I've been tracking small forwards, which is a bit different compared to like general forwards and stuff like that. And yeah, they're giving up the number one of the D's to small forwards, and the Wiz is obviously as good as it gets. And yeah, he'll get his 15, I reckon, if that's what you need him to get. I looked the other day, and I think you could back him to get 13 or 14. So,
Wow.
yeah, I'm happy to play that, Wally. There's going to be other ones. Well, I think that I will. I'll try and put
Wait
an
for teams.
SGM out for the punters on this one because I think it lines up really well for an SGM. So I'll do my best to get one out for the punters on X on Saturday. I do have past
Yeah.
players though, so I'll get it on
Oh, mate,
before
this
I
is
get
perfect.
on
So
the beers.
Saturday is just an absolute fill up on the tins and also on the SGMs, hopefully. Mate, that is great news because I obviously will be there and I will have the one thing I will be getting asked by my mates I'm going with this, who are we on? And if we just got an SGM, that's just perfect. So looking forward to that. And the good thing about disposal SGMs, it doesn't matter who you barrack for, Harrow, because it doesn't affect the result. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is good. This is my sort of day because I don't need to worry about a Hawks result, a line or anything like that. We can just focus on hopefully a goal fest, a great game, Cozzy at one end, the Wiz at the other end. I'm really excited about it. I think they're out. I mean, I know Sydney, but I think the two actual most exciting teams in the way they play at the moment are Melbourne and Hawthorn.
Yeah.
I think that
No,
I
it's
think
going to
that's
be a
fair.
beauty. Yeah.
Yeah. And the two most exciting players, I don't think any AFL fan that watches footy would argue with Pickett and Watson being the two most exciting, explosive players at the moment. So it's going to
Yeah.
be really, really good. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
All right, mate, we move on. After that game, you can roll into a pub and watch the Carlton Western Bulldogs game. Carlton, the 260 with Josh Fraser standing, their caretaker coach coming in. Western Bulldogs, $1.55. The line in is 13.5. A quick question that we got asked with this one was, with Voss gone, how would you see the Blues playing now? Ultra aggressive as they have nothing to lose, could load up on other team for disposals. Like, what are we thinking here? We know the history, Harrow, of coach gone, first week bounce back. Historically, there's the thinking around it. I've never actually looked at the numbers on this, but there's the thinking that they do get a bit of a boost, and they could well here, Harrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I will be. This isn't a game that you really want to bet on before teams because you just don't know what Carlton are going to be looking to do. They might have a complete change in tact here with roles and everything like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they name their team. So the Dogs are pretty stable though. So and the comment there is like, as a first game coach, are you going to roll out and go, right, we're gonna play really defensive and have a bunch of I don't think so. And I look at Bont here, mate. He's set at 27.5. He's achieved that 6 of his 9 games. And if you actually take out the game where he was tagged and got 14, then you also take out the game against the Lions in round 0 or whatever they call it, when he got 19. But he actually went forward for the whole second half in that.
Mm.
You take those 2 games out of the sample, you could basically say he's 6 from 7, getting 28. And so I'm happy to back the Bont here, over 27.5 disposals. There's another guy here, and he's been one of our better guys to back this season. We noticed when Libba went out of the team, our old mate Sanders, he had a big
Yes.
boost. And
He's been
Libba's
very
stayed.
good for us.
He has been good.
He has been very good for us. Riley Sanders, every time you say his name, I smile, Harro.
So yeah, he's actually got 25 in 6 straight games now, and he's just loving this role without Libba there basically, because he can go and chase the footy and get that ball that Libba was getting before, and so happy to back him to get his 25 again. His line's 24.5, and he even did that last week against Port. And I thought last week, basically, Port dragged most midfielders down a few, and he still did it against them. So yeah, pretty keen to pick out those 2 bets in a game which I don't want to put too much out on before I've had a listen to the coach and seen what sort of team he's named and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, just set yourself up with those couple, and then we might do something else later on.
Great. Stay tuned on that one, punters. Okay, we'll move on to the Sunday games. Essendon Freo kicks us off on Sunday. Essendon $5.80, Freo $1.17. The line's 34.5. Although that was low.
Yeah, there's a reason for it. I think they're expecting a bit of rain.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's probably brought the total points down, and the line maybe has moved with it a little bit, because obviously it's a little bit harder to smash a line when you're playing in tricky conditions. I'm just trying to look up the weather now, actually, Wally. Sorry. So it's very hard to base your bets, when you don't have clarity around the conditions. And I'm just looking here. Melbourne on Sunday, they've got they're not even sure. They're saying 3 to 15 mil. I mean, there's a big difference between 3 and 15 mil, isn't there?
Yeah.
So I can talk a little bit about the 2 teams and what I've been seeing from them. The Dons, when they're good, they look great, as they did against GWS. And when they're bad, they look horrendous. So what are you going to get? I just don't know. But some of their stats look really good against GWS. They won the inside 50s by 15. They had more scoring shots. They had 1 contested possession. And they actually spent 82 minutes of the game in front. And so, they're obviously still fielding a really young, inexperienced team, and they're going to have these fluctuations. When they get it right, they do look pretty good. A guy I'm following at the moment, I've backed him the last couple of weeks, he's done the job for us, is Sammy Durham. And he had 26 on the weekend with 8 clearances, 6 tackles. He goes about it the right way, doesn't he? So really happy to keep following him. So long as his line doesn't get up too high, if it stays around these low 20s, he seems to be doing that with ease. Not saying to back him, but Sullivan Roby, he actually looks like a good prospect. I know the Dons fans are probably thinking, what have we got to look forward to? Well, he looks pretty good, and he's done some really nice things. Freo, they're going to really have enjoyed having a nice long break after having completed the 3 6-day breaks in a row, getting the 3 wins. They now get a longer break and maybe a bit of an easier game against Essendon. And look, they were really good, weren't they, in the second half against Hawthorn? Once they were able to start putting a bit of pressure on Hawthorn and not allow them to use the ball how they wanted to, they were really good, and they're going to be right up the top end. But this one, Wally, I don't want to get too involved with the sort of uncertainty about the weather, because otherwise I'd be thinking, there's a lot of guys in this game who would be indicated, but they wouldn't be great bets if it's wet. But, I guess there's other guys who are probably going to go well either way, and it's like your Sarongs, who looked really good on the weekend, back to his best form against the Hawks. So think about that type of player. If it's wet, who do you want to be on? We know Luke Jackson is a gun in the wet, and he was amazing against Hawthorn. So could look at that as well. But look, it's Sunday. We're talking on a Wednesday. Let's get some clarity around the weather before we do anything too much.
Absolutely. All right, next Sunday game, St Kilda v Richmond. Saints are $1.10, Richmond $7. The line's 40.5. Naz obviously missing now for a few weeks. And a question around this was, does that put Flanders Hall or potentially Wilson as big beneficiaries of the Naz out?
Yeah, I know that it's really helped Hall. I've noticed him in the last 2 weeks, even with when Naz played previously. It's actually helped him quite a lot, and he's a bit of an up and coming player, and a guy Ross Lyon's probably trying to get more time into the midfield there as well. I think he's had 22 the last 2 weeks, so a bit of a bump for him. Flanders. Look, it's a great matchup for him. It's just if he's going to get the role. He's not the greatest player, and so I'm not sure whether Ross is whether he's a big fan of him. I'm just bringing up the actual the centre bounce attendances right now, Wally. Just give us a sec. I just want to make sure I'm right about what I'm saying. Yeah, Flanders 52%. So he had a bit of a bump in there, definitely. But Hall is the one who'd been getting 20%, up to 50 odd percent on the weekend. So yeah, he does look like the one, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Darcy Wilson didn't get a big go in there, so maybe it is Hall. Windhager looks like he's probably going to be in there. What I do know against the Tigers, it's the gun players who do most of the damage. Like they don't put heaps of work into the gun players on the opposition. So like a Jack
Mm.
Sinclair this week's probably at a really good spot here because he knows how to get the footy. He's probably their best player without Naz being there. So I'll be happy to play him. And the Tigers folded back again on the weekend, and Backman were getting the footy against them a lot. There's a guy playing for Richmond who I'm really enjoying his footy, and it's Ross. He's been getting heaps of the footy. He's actually second in the comp for loose ball gets, which is I
Mm.
know it's a stat that the coaches really keep an eye on. And you look at his last 4 games; they're all 26 plus. And you can get him $1.80 just to get the 24. He's going fantastic. I'm not ready to dive in and back the Saints
Fair enough.
at the big line here, even though they're probably fairly formidable at Marvel. We did saw the Tigers, even the Tigers with all the players they've got out at the moment, they were pretty competitive against West Coast. So I'm not too keen to dive in at the big odds. But
Yeah.
the possession bets here, especially around some of those St Kilda players, they look really good. Also, if
Yep.
Wilkie misses, there'll be a heap more disposals for the Saints backs, like a Jack
Yep.
Silvani against Richmond could be in a good spot. And you might only need him to get 15 or so as well to cash in.
Yep. Absolutely. So stay tuned on that. We'll come back to that on socials if there's more um, around disposal on the Sunday. All right, the last game of the weekend we have Harro GWS, excuse me, going over to West Coast and taking them on. West Coast is $4.60. GWS are $1.22. The line's 29.5. A question on this one was Lockie Ash went back to half back in the fourth quarter. Do you think he stays back or goes to half forward? Also, I've noticed Freo are giving a bit to high CBA contested mids. Do you notice any other trends? So some good questions there, Harro.
Yeah, well, West Coast actually played a really defensive style game on the weekend in terms of like flooding the opposition forward line, and that allowed a lot of disposals to defenders in that game. And if they continue with that here, like your really obvious one, obviously, is
Mm.
Lockie Whitfield, who is really racking him up anyway. So he's Whitfield's last 5 games are 31, 29, 32, 30, 35. So he's going fantastic. He'd be, a guy that you'd be able to play him pretty soundly. Now, Ash, he
Yep.
only had the 23 disposals on the weekend. I thought he had his most impact when he went back. But he was in the coaches' votes. I think he might
Yep.
have had the most coaches' votes. And I was a little bit shocked by that because I didn't think he was amazing. And I was kind of thinking maybe he will go back again. But the coach seems happy with it, so they'll probably stick with it. If Ash is playing midfield, it means that Toby Green is playing forward.
Yep.
And you could look at his goals. He kicked 3 on the weekend. Look, he's $3.90 to kick 3 against West Coast. You probably think that's not a bad spot, so long as that we're getting our matchups right here. And from a West Coast point of view, I've been really impressed with the number 1 draft pick, Dersma. Been backing him to get 20 most weeks, and he's been getting it done. Also, Tim Kelly. Tim Kelly seems to be back in career best form, and he's getting his 25 every week. Now, you only need him to get 24 to get his line. We know that GWS, they're no longer that tagging type team. So I'd be happy to look at that too, mate. And so a little bit to look forward to in the last game of the round.
Looking forward to that, mate. All right, that's it from us for the week. We need your best bet now, Harro, to round us out. And, tricky this week. It wasn't like last week. I felt like last week I had a read on this. I will say this. Actually, Harro, I'll say it after you give your best bet. I got a DM about your best bet this week and a prediction, but let's get it. I don't think he was right. I thought he was going to be right, but I don't think he is. Fire away.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to go with the grand final rematch, mate, and I'm going to take the Brisbane Lions to win by 15 points plus at home against the Cat side off a 5-day break.
There you go. Well, our man Liam texts through and he goes, I would bet anything that Harro will be taking on the Pies this weekend due to his love for the Swans and his questions he's asked of Collingwood. And I said, he goes, I don't mind, mate. I don't have a dog in the fight, but he goes, I just reckon. And I said, that's going to be interesting. I said, it's a good thing. It's good thinking. But he was wrong.
When the
Harro
line was
gone
20,
with Brisbane.
When the line was 22.5, but now it's blown out to 30. It's kind of like, okay, well.
It's a big line, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. I still think they'll cover it, but it's not best bet territory at the moment.
And the other thing we know is if you're only a few % off against Collingwood, they make you pay. Doesn't matter what, because they're so organised and so well structured. So if you come into that game and you're not right on, and you just you drop the ball a little bit or you have a couple of lapses, you still could get the win, but it might only be a couple of goals. Yeah, 30 points a big start. All right, Harro, you've been great as always, mate. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the footy. And we'll see you next week.
Imagine what you could be buying instead. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.